When it comes to looking good on camera, lighting is going to get you about 90% of the way there, which we've already covered in this video. But what about that last 10%? My name's David, aka Ghost of Mozart on social media, and today we're looking at our webcam settings in OBS. Now today is not going to be an overall tutorial on how to use OBS as a whole. So really quickly, if you don't know, all you have to do to add your webcam is go to this little plus sign and then click Video Capture Device, create a new one, and then select your webcam as your source. Once you have added your webcam, all you have to do is right click on it, go to Properties, and it's gonna bring up this screen. This is where we're going to actually start our tutorial. So now that I have this screen up, I'm actually gonna get OBS out of the way so we can just focus on the important menus here. All right, let's go over the basic settings first. You can decide what you want your resolution to be. Most of you are probably going to select 1920 by 1080, or you're gonna be doing 1280 by 720, but I'll leave that up to you. Moving on to the features that I usually don't see people changing is gonna start with our FPS. Your FPS stands for frames per second, most of you know this, and you're gonna actually change this to highest frames per second. It's not gonna be set by this by default, and we'll go over why in a moment. Up next is video format. I leave this at any, but some people have described that when they have that choppy, laggy effect, changing this video format to MJPEG has solved their issues. So it's worth a shot. If you get through this whole video after changing all the different settings we're gonna go over, you're still having issues with choppiness, try switching this to MJPEG, but I'm leaving mine at any. Color space you want to set to the highest option available. For me, that's 709. Color range, you're gonna set to full, and the rest we can leave normal. Scrolling back up, this is actually the important menu that I wanna look at today. We're gonna click configure video. Okay, so I think that my webcam and my scene looks pretty good right now, actually, but the way that I achieved that was not only with lighting, but actually manually changing some of these settings. So I'm gonna go ahead and click default, and it's probably gonna look a lot more similar to this menu, how you're seeing it. So once I click default, it resets a lot of my settings, and I already don't like it. I've found that the first step in really having control over your webcam and really being able to mess with it is disabling all of these auto features. So we're gonna take off low light compensation, auto exposure, which is the biggest one for me. And if we go back over to this video proc amp tab, disable auto white balance, and then disable auto brightness. After that, click apply. You're not gonna notice any differences yet because we haven't actually manually changed any of them. We've just disabled the auto stuff. One of the reasons it's important to change this before really messing with your lighting is because no matter what you do with your lighting, your camera is going to try to automatically adjust and make differences based on what it sees. So no matter how much you mess with lighting, it's really not gonna help a whole ton when your camera is automatically bouncing levels up and down based on what you're doing. So disable all this auto stuff, set your lighting, and then come in here to tweak it manually once it's pretty close to how you want it. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's actually look what you can do. So like I said earlier, the biggest noticeable difference for me is in this camera control tab, and that is our exposure. When this is set to auto, it is a nightmare to deal with when you're doing anything with lighting. But as you can see, as I drag this down, it's going to get a lot darker. My webcam is getting very dark. You'll also notice that my movement is incredibly smooth, like almost unnaturally smooth. It doesn't look great actually, but if I bump this up, it's gonna be the exact opposite. The room's gonna get brighter, but my movement is also going to become extremely laggy and choppy. And I know for a fact many of you have dealt with this exact problem. It was my biggest gripe with this webcam before I understood why it was doing it. So we're actually gonna jump back down to, I find the sweet spot to be -5 to -6, and this is kind of where I prefer to have it. Again, if this is set to auto, and then you start changing all of your lighting, look, it's like already, I don't know if you saw that little jump, but it already tries to set what it thinks the best exposure should be, but it's constantly changing is the problem when it's set to auto. So you're gonna get moments of like choppiness and lagginess, and it's annoying. So take auto off, set your exposure based on, yeah, that looks pretty good. And then now we can really fine tune the rest of the settings that we're gonna go over. The next one is actually probably focus. I didn't touch on this earlier because I kind of forgot about it, but so with autofocus enabled, it will automatically focus on what it thinks the subject should be. The problem with that is these webcams aren't absolutely amazing with autofocus. So a lot of times you'll see this quick like, like little telescope effect all of a sudden for a split second, and a lot of people really hate that. So I do tend to leave this off so that once I get everything in focus that I want, and I know I'm not going to be moving a whole ton or bringing things really close to the camera, then I just know I'm pretty much set. So that's kind of your choice if you want to auto enable this, but you can also set it to manual. If you know that you're going to be doing like a product video or something and you're like, yeah, I want this in focus at all times, you can manually drag this slider up, and look at that, my butterfly knife is in focus, and even if I get anything else in the frame behind it, that focus point isn't going to change. So it's kind of up to you if you want to manually set the focus and try not to move, if you want to leave it on auto, whatever you want. But the way that I have my room set up, I find leaving it at 0% is just fine. Another thing that people don't seem to know about their webcam is your webcam usually can zoom, and you don't want to mess with it too much, but I found this very useful. If I drag this zoom all the way out, you'll see I have like a bunch of stuff set up on these window blinds right here, which isn't really appealing to have in the frame. And you can even see a little bit of the bracket of my pop filter, as well as some dirty, nasty cords down here with my Roomba and my lighting. So I actually do like to kind of close the gap a little bit and bring this in. So this is kind of my preferred framing. So mess with your zoom and get it just how you want. So we're already starting to look really good, I'm not gonna lie. But let's go over to this other tab and do some fine tuning. Up next is your brightness. Like I said, your exposure is gonna be your biggest noticeable difference in the brightness in the room, but messing with your brightness really can kind of fine tune it. As you can see, as I'm raising it, things are getting brighter, but the picture profile is also getting flatter. As you lower it, the picture profile gets a lot more in depth. It's a little too dark though. So I generally just lower the brightness a little bit and mess with my exposure and leave it about there. As far as contrast goes, contrast means the difference between shadow and light. So if we drag this way up, we're gonna start looking like a deep fried meme, as you can see. The dynamic range on webcams is not that great. So just touching these a little bit, all of these sliders, you're gonna notice a big difference. But usually for contrast, I like to go just a couple spots away from the middle, pretty much. Maybe right about there. But you can kind of play with this and see what your preferred look is. Also, in case you're wondering, if you drag this all the way to the left, it's like the flattest it can possibly be. It looks god-awful, but that's kind of an idea on what you can do with contrast. I'm not gonna go over saturation, sharpness, but you can certainly mess with these. The next one I'm gonna go over is white balance. Messing with this fader, basically what you're trying to do is get anything in your picture that is supposed to be white as looking as white as it can possibly be. And really the importance of white balance is to set skin tone on actual people. Messing with this is going to drastically affect the skin tone of your subject. So if I drag this down, you're gonna see I'm already becoming like bluish purple, right? This is way down. If I drag this all the way up, I'm gonna instantly become a little bit too warm. So it's a cool and warm temperature. So this is like a, you know, it's way too warm. It's almost like a sepia tone. If you leave this on auto, it's the most frustrating thing ever to deal with lighting. So I generally just try to naturally set it, but I will give you guys a fair warning. Don't judge me on my white balance because I am colorblind. So this is the trickiest for me, but you definitely need to know about it if you're trying to nail your presentation. And I know most of you guys out there are not colorblind, so definitely mess with your white balance until you get it looking just right. I don't mess with backlight compensation too much because it really only has two settings, 1 and 2, or 1 and 0 rather. And I always leave it at 0. And then your gain is actually also going to affect the brightness a little bit. So you can bump it up a little bit. I usually do my exposure set for an eyeball level, drop my brightness just a couple inches to the left, and then I'll actually mess with my gain a little bit to make that kind of compensation. So honestly, this is pretty close to exactly what I want from my webcam. So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit apply and hit OK. So it's always good to look at these settings right before you're starting a video or a stream or whatever you're using OBS for to really nail the look for your scene. Now, if you want to take it a step further, you can actually bring back up OBS, right? And I'm going to make it so it doesn't look like Inception up in here. And then go into here and go to filters. You're gonna see this little menu pop up. And what you can do is actually go to this little plus sign and add a color correction. So this is very similar to all of the different webcam settings that we looked at. But the cool thing is you can throw color correction on any source in OBS, whether that be your game capture. your overlays, your graphics, whatever it is, you can throw color correction on any source in OBS and you basically have the same set of sliders that we just messed with our webcam. So that's pretty much it. I just took the color correction off. Whether it looks better or worse is up to you, but that's the beauty in this stuff. You can mess with this for hours until it looks just exactly how you want. But I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please hit the like button. It helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And don't forget, you can always catch me live and ask me any questions on Twitch because I stream 3 times a week, and you can find those links in the description below. But until then, I'll see you next time.